Shizuma finally graduated from veterinary school and is now ready to face a new chapter of his life with Minato. However, Minato didn't fully expect that this new chapter would mean less time with Shizuma, what with him being too busy with work. Shizuma thought that living together would fix that problem, but would Minato agree to it? An unknown hand from a silhouette of a man reached out to give tissues to a crying woman, as he couldn't bear to simply watch and do nothing to a maiden in distress. In between her crying and wailing, she explained to the owner of the tissues that she had just recently broken up with her boyfriend. As the owner of the tissues encouraged the woman to let her sad feelings out, the woman was touched by his kindness and immediately realized that the man was a pretty attractive one. The woman invited him to the bar in the hotel to thank him for his kindness, with obvious intentions of flirting with him. Before the man could speak up, another voice warned the woman against drinking with the man. A light-haired man came up from behind them, explaining that the other man would sweet-talk people into going into a hotel room and would forget everything that happened the next morning. The woman exclaimed that the man didn't look like someone who would do such a thing. The light-haired man came over and hugged the owner of the tissues from behind, explaining that that was precisely what he did to him. Amidst the noise of the streets, the light-haired man glared at his lover, Shizuma, who was tailing him from behind, and reminded him to stop being so nice all the time. Shizuma tried to make an excuse for himself, saying that it was just a tissue and he felt bad because she looked upset. The light-haired man instead flared into a rant about how she was a grown woman who could pick up a tissue by herself and that Shizuma should avoid talking to girls when he is away. Shizuma insisted that he planned to reject the girl's advances, even if the light-haired man wasn't there to swat them away. The light-haired man flared up even more, noting that the fact that another girl tried to flirt with his man was what upset him the most. In the middle of their banter, the light-haired man noted that his Shizuma is a nice guy who is kind and considerate to everyone, often giving them the wrong idea. Having a boyfriend like that had him becoming even more irritable than before they were together, he thought as he sighed at his predicament. Our MC is really complaining about the life I want to live. Huh. As they continued walking, Shizuma caught up to the blonde. He noticed that his lover, Minato's, hair was tousled and proceeded to fix it. Feeling that Shizuma was also trying to fix his mood, Minato pinched Shizuma's hand that was fixing his hair and noted that it was unfair that Shizuma could easily get away with things like this by doing that. Yes, officer. Sir. Yes. This panel right here stole my heart. Minato then asked if they were still on time. Both of them had to get going to not miss it, and Shizuma asked if Minato was sure about something, because he would expect them to freak out, them being Shizuma's friends. At a Japanese bar, Chikagawa and Tatsumi were completely surprised at the revelation that Minato and Shizuma were now together. Chikagawa was in an excited mood, eager to know more about how they started dating and if Shizuma could really do it with a man. Chikagawa claimed to be their Cupid since he and Tatsumi brought him to the bar where they first met, but Minato refuted it by saying that his skills in bed were good enough to seduce Shizuma. Shizuma apologized for Chikagawa's excitable demeanor, but Minato didn't mind him. Rather, Chikagawa's enthusiasm wasn't shared by everyone at the table, as Tatsumi was indifferent and Yuka was completely stunned by the information. Minato quickly recalled his first meeting with Shizuma, when he sincerely wished for his cheating ex-girlfriend's happiness instead of cursing her out. Minato fell for his incredible capacity for forgiveness and kindness, even despite all the lies and trickery he did in the past. Minato believed that a man like Shizuma was completely wasted on someone like him, and so his anxieties and worries would be going away soon. After recovering from the shock, Yuka congratulated Shizuma but asked for assurance that their relationship wouldn't change. Shizuma clarified if she was referring to the fact that she cheated on him and dumped him right after. That's my man, Shizuma. Don't take any of Yuka's BS anymore. Chikagawa asked Minato if he was okay with Yuka getting too close to Shizuma. After staring at the two while they were talking, Minato claimed that he didn't mind at all. Minato told them that he and Shizuma had spent the last few days together after his certification exam, going on dates to many places. As if to spite Yuka, Minato also emphasized that Shizuma spent the night before with him, and that Shizuma enjoyed being with Minato the morning prior. Yuka was once again stunned at the mere thought of her ex-boyfriend being with another man, while Tatsumi was feeling resentful about Shizuma getting a lover before the certification exam and even handily passing the exam despite it. Shizuma then recalled the nights he stayed up studying, thanks to Minato's incessant reminders to study hard. Minato made it clear that no lover of his would not be successful. He then changed the mood of the room, asking them about how they felt about officially being veterinarians. Shizuma exclaimed that he was overjoyed at the fact that his childhood dream had come true. The three men were joyfully recalling their days in veterinary school, and Minato was basking in their happiness until Chikagawa mentioned that Tatsumi and Shizuma were assigned to a clinic with only female employees. Shizuma froze, while Minato emanated the angry aura of someone who had just heard this piece of crucial information. The two were referred to that local clinic by their professor. When they first visited, they did notice a few male vets. However, they all left the clinic by the time the two men got their offers. Chikagawa was sent to a different clinic, leaving him quite jealous of the arrangement that his two other friends got. According to the professor, the director of the clinic was also a gorgeous woman, although neither Shizuma nor Tatsumi saw them when they visited the facility. As Chikagawa taunted Tatsumi to make a move on the potentially attractive director, Minato was left feeling unsettled with the prospect of leaving his boyfriend, who was initially straight, with a den of women at work. Detecting his boyfriend's anxiety, Shizuma held Minato's hand underneath the table and gave him a soft, reassuring look. Minato was satisfied, and the three men continued to talk about their future veterinary careers. On the other hand, Minato noticed Yuka still on the ground from the shock. Yuka saw Minato and Shizuma's intertwined hands, and Minato teased her by squeezing Shizuma's hand while waving it to her. Yuka couldn't take it anymore and announced that she was leaving to see her boyfriend. I was definitely Yuka in this scene. I would just get way too jealous of Minato. Smug at his victory, Minato reminded her to check that she didn't forget anything. As she went through her bag, she noticed that she didn't have her shoe locker key. Chikagawa and Tatsumi asked her to check her purse and pocket, but her key wasn't at any of those places. Minato was surprised that she could lose something so fast. Then Shizuma noted that it might be in her makeup pouch, since she tended to put random things there without thinking. Yuka did find the key there, showing that Shizuma knew Yuka so much, down to her habits. Yuka asked Chikagawa to walk her to the station, while Shizuma went to the comfort room. Minato sighed with a tinge of anxiety in his mind as his boyfriend once again proved himself to be a kind person who once loved women. Tatsumi noticed Minato's worries and tried to console him, saying that you're bound to know someone and their habits after dating for 2 years. He encouraged Minato to give Shizuma time to know his habits. Minato was surprised to hear Tatsumi consoling him, especially since they didn't start on the right foot. He commented that Tatsumi was softening on him, although Tatsumi stubbornly claimed that his demeanor hadn't changed. Minato further teased Tatsumi that he was blushing, and then he took a good look at the eyeglass-wearing man. Noticing a potentially attractive man hiding underneath his glasses, Minato leaned over to Tatsumi and noted that having another attractive man around Shizuma would help keep other women from taking a liking to him. With a devilish grin and a wicked plan, Minato poked Tatsumi's glasses and encouraged him to take those ugly glasses off. As Shizuma came back from the restroom, Minato was in the midst of his quest to remove Tatsumi's glasses, putting him in a suggestive position on top of a horrified Tatsumi. An awkward yet comedic aura enveloped the three men as Shizuma saw his lover on a racy straddle with his friend. As the night ended, Chikagawa was taking care of a drunken Tatsumi as they were making their way home. In his inebriated stupor, Tatsumi asked where Shizuma and Minato had gone, to which Chikagawa answered that they already left via taxi. Chikagawa wondered how Tatsumi got himself so drunk, which was unlike him. Slurring his words, Tatsumi commented about someone acting like such a child, as Chikagawa was left clueless as to who he was referring to. The couple checked into a hotel room, and Shizuma immediately held Minato in a passionate kiss as soon as they entered the room. Minato tried to break out of the kiss to remind Shizuma to lock the door, only to be cut off by Shizuma's lips making contact once again with his. As Shizuma's kisses trailed down to his neck and Shizuma's hands down to his pants, Minato was thinking out loud about what got Shizuma into this wanton mood before he got pushed down the bed. Shizuma made his way down to Minato's body as he asked how he felt about the night. Minato definitely enjoyed hanging out with Shizuma's friends, and he especially remarked that Tatsumi was unexpectedly entertaining despite their first impressions of each other. Upset by the sudden development, Shizuma came on to Minato aggressively. Minato noticed that Shizuma was jealous, finding it cute that he even got Tatsumi drunk, all the while Shizuma busied himself with Minato's clothes. Shizuma immediately proceeded to pleasure Minato with the same intensity of his jealousy, with Minato's attention toward another man, distracting Minato from finishing his sentence until he was satisfied. While blissfully enjoying the aftermath, Minato remarked that he wasn't going to apologize for it, since Shizuma was equally guilty for not mentioning him working at a place full of women. Shizuma tried to assure Minato that women weren't going to take him away from Minato as he took off his clothes, Slightly provoked by Shizuma's indifference, Minato grabbed Shizuma by the hem and positioned himself on top of him. Aroused and anxious, Minato repeated his declarations of love toward the man beneath in between his belabored breaths. As his form of apology, Minato took the initiative this time around. Minato was clearly uncomfortable going at it with no preparation, which concerned Shizuma. Minato teasingly took offense at his concern, asking if he wasn't satisfying him at all, taking that as a hint that Minato was indeed fine. Shizuma exclaimed that Minato did so well that he was having a hard time holding back. Content with the answer, Minato continued to take the lead. As the night went on, Minato was reaching his limit as he was weakening at the pleasure of being held by Shizuma. Shizuma then retook control and carried on while Minato was delirious with rapture. At the height of their lovemaking, Shizuma gently held Minato in his arms as they shared a passionate kiss. Both men stayed on the veranda to enjoy the night, with Minato smoking a cigarette and Shizuma enjoying a warm cup. Minato was upset at Shizuma for messing up his favorite shirt, cursing Shizuma out and swearing to ruin his. With the chilly night creeping up on them, Shizuma pulled Minato closer to keep him warm. Forlorn, Minato remarked that spring vacation was about to end and Shizuma was about to go amid a den of women, burying his face into the rails in utter distaste. Shizuma clarified that he was technically only going to work. Clearly upset and anxious, Minato offered Shizuma a position to become his assistant, noting that he was earning decent money and could definitely support Shizuma. Clinging on to the impractical hope of stopping Shizuma from going to a workplace with only females, Minato assured that Shizuma would enjoy being his servant. Shizuma gently ruffled Minato's hair as he recognized that Minato would feel lonely once he started working. You can definitely see that Minato is still fighting his anxieties and insecurities. Fighting Minato. To reassure him, Shizuma promised to meet up more often and call him every evening. Minato planned to hold on to that promise, chewing Shizuma off and threatening to cheat on him if he missed a single call. Soothing his cheek, Shizuma remarked that Minato still didn't fully trust him. Putting his cigarette away, Minato resigned to trusting Shizuma, just as he decided to do when they got together. With a forlorn expression that showed his fears, Minato just wanted Shizuma to assure him that he wouldn't make him too uneasy. Shizuma was touched by Minato showing his vulnerable side and exclaimed that he couldn't even bother to find anyone else when someone as adorable as Minato was with him as he pulled him into an embrace. As Shizuma nuzzled his face into Minato's locks instead of pulling away, Minato called Shizuma out after lighting a new cigarette. Shizuma, now more sincere and serious, repeated his promise of calling Minato every night and doing his best to keep Minato from worrying. Shizuma only wished that Minato would promise that he wouldn't try to find someone else too. Bewildered by the earnest tone, Minato thought that Shizuma took his previous remark about cheating too seriously. Lightening up on the mood, Minato jokingly asked what Shizuma would do if he ever did cheat on him. Shizuma would wear Coke bottle glasses if that was what it would take for Minato to fall in love with him again. Amused at the answer, Minato thought that he probably wanted to cheat just to see the sight of it. Shizuma pulled Minato away to meet his eyes, clarifying that he was simply joking. He took the cigarette from Minato's mouth as if to prevent the smoke from covering Shizuma's eyes. If Minato ever cheated on him with anyone and for any reason, Shizuma would never forgive him. Shizuma looked at Minato with a hint of desperation, as if pleading with him never to do that to him. Minato, you should have already learned not to joke about cheating with Shizuma. Tsk, tsk, tsk. In his mind, Minato was secretly happy. Despite Shizuma's kindness, Shizuma was feeling the same anxiety that he was feeling, as if proof of his love for him. Shizuma was still waiting for Minato's answer, but Minato playfully ignored Shizuma's concern and then bit him again. It was already April 1st. With flowers blossoming to welcome spring, Minato asked if Shizuma would be able to make it in time. Shizuma was getting ready to leave for work and kissing Minato on the cheek when he remembered that Minato had a shift at the shop and reminded him to drive carefully. Minato noticed that Shizuma's shoes were on the wrong feet, and Shizuma acknowledged that he was more nervous than he thought. Minato gave him a strong pat on the back and told him to snap out of it, encouraging him to become a good veterinarian as Shizuma wanted to be. With Minato's motivation, Shizuma left the apartment. Minato was left watching the scene of Shizuma leaving for the first day of his new life. Despite Shizuma's promise of calling every day, Minato wouldn't particularly care as long as Shizuma fulfilled his dream of becoming a great veterinarian. Until 1 week later, and the sparse communication between the couple was already irritating Minato. Even though Shizuma did his best to text him every night, their calls left Minato with a lot to be desired. Not even hearing Shohei call out that his break was over, he went through their latest conversation, where they barely exchanged greetings. From their calls and texts, Minato gathered that Shizuma had been coming home late every night. He'd excused Shizuma for basically breaking their promise if he was indeed overworked. However, Minato was already imagining a harem of women unnecessarily touching Shizuma all over at work. Pissed at his train of thought, he swore to make Shizuma pay if he ever did anything out of line. Meanwhile, Shizuma and Tatsumi were each holding onto a piece of rope as they were painting the side of the office. Tatsumi was questioning if they were indeed vets because they weren't acting like one with the duties they were doing, while Shizuma just told him to shut it. A week before that, a senior veterinarian of the Onodera Animal Hospital was introducing Shizuma and Tatsumi to the rest of the veterinary staff in the facility. Silence draped over the 5 women, who were unimpressed and indifferent to the new additions. The senior full-time veterinarian, Dr. Nakacho, began to introduce all 5 vet techs: Atago, Hayami, Sahiyama, Kashima, and Mamiya. Dr. Nakacho then led both men away to introduce them to their duties. As Shizuma was questioning the uncomfortable atmosphere of the 5 women, both men overheard the vet techs betting on which one of them would leave first and how long they would last in the hospital. Sahiyama remarked that they should stop gossiping and start working harder since there were now 2 new useless people around. The 2 men were sweating nervously after hearing the conversation, wondering what would happen to them in the office. As they went up the stairs, Dr. Nakacho mentioned that the director was on a 3-week business trip, so she would be in charge of them in the meantime, and that the director also left her instructions for their training. To start their training, Dr. Nakacho asked them to move some potted plants from the top of the hospital to the front of the clinic. Thinking that the task seemed relatively easy, Shizuma and Tatsumi lifted 1 pot each, only to realize that each of them was carrying a whopping 100 pounds. Dr. Nakacho then informed them that the director had those potted plants fitted with special pot covers, which made each pot that heavy. Both men were quivering at the sheer weight of the pot as they assured the senior veterinarian that they could do the task. A vet tech came up to call Dr. Nakacho, and Dr. Nakacho slipped a paper containing both men's tasks into Shizuma's pocket. Before leaving, she reminded them not to push themselves too much. Shizuma could only distractedly respond as he was preoccupied with the weight of the potted plants. Half an hour later, both men finished the task of carrying 15 100-pound potted plants down 4 flights of stairs. Exhausted from that physically taxing activity, Shizuma and Tatsumi peered through the hospital's front window and saw that the facility was busy with vaccinations. Encouraging themselves to finish up all the tasks so that they could help around, they checked out Dr. Nakajo's list, only to see a long list of menial tasks for repairs around the clinic. During their evening call, Minato was wondering if Shizuma actually had to do all those petty tasks. Shizuma confirmed it as he complained about his body aching all over after painting the wall for the day. Minato had to confirm if Shizuma applied as a veterinarian instead of a janitor at the hospital. Shizuma apologized for not staying in touch, while Minato noted that he had already accumulated 3 points toward cheating. Shizuma could only plead to Minato not to keep count. Minato was upset with his lover's pitiful state of being delegated to becoming the clinic's busybody, although he was relieved that there was no hint of Shizuma being flocked by a harem of women. Minato asked him if he was fine being treated as such, but Shizuma noted that doing basic chores was nothing to him. However, everyone in the clinic not having high expectations of him felt bad, so Shizuma was instead motivated to prove them otherwise. Having his worries dispelled by Shizuma's vigor, Minato felt dumb for worrying about him. Shizuma, the perfect man that you are. A great lover and definitely going to be a great doctor. I don't know what else you would look for in a man. Minato heard pages flipping and asked what Shizuma was reading. Shizuma was going through the case histories of the clinic's patients, wanting to learn more about them despite not being able to examine them. Minato heard Shizuma yawn from the other end of the call, and then Shizuma asked how Minato's day went. Minato remarked that new baby bunnies were coming, so he had to take their photos tomorrow. Shizuma was excited to see the pictures of the cute bunnies, and Minato could hear his happy, yet sleepy, tone in the call. However, Minato was getting impatient. He glanced at his desk calendar, where he marked Shizuma's day off on Tuesday. He wanted to see Shizuma again, so he asked if Shizuma had any other plans for his day off. In the midst of Minato inviting him to eat on Tuesday, Minato heard a loud noise. Shizuma dropped the book he was reading as he dozed off in the middle of their call and didn't hear what Minato said. Concerned, Minato instead told Shizuma to sleep. Shizuma insisted that they could talk for longer, but Minato warned him that a newbie vet getting sick would inconvenience everyone at work. Minato firmly ordered him to go to bed right away. Defeated, Shizuma went to his bed and immediately felt his eyelids drop as he mumbled about getting too comfortable to stay awake. Shizuma drifted to sleep right after saying good night to Minato. Wistfully looking at the recently ended call that only lasted for 12 minutes, Minato was impressed that Shizuma managed to talk with him for that long after a tiring day at work and studying at the end of the day. The next day, Shoei was surprised that Shizuma was only able to talk to Minato for 12 minutes after only having texts from each other for 2 weeks. Minato was busying himself with taking photos of the baby rabbits, with Shoei holding up the reflector. Shoei remarked that he hadn't seen his brother despite living in the same house for the past few weeks, but he was still surprised that he could only spare 12 minutes in those weeks for Minato. Minato understood that Shizuma was busy with work, and he wasn't going to pester Shizuma when he was working. Shohei teased Minato, saying that he was definitely missing Shizuma. If Itsuki, Shoei's lover and Minato's older brother, were also that way, Shoei wouldn't be able to hold himself back. Minato pulled up Shoei's mask, retorting that he was a patient adult, unlike Shoei. As both men bantered, Itsuki then came inside the shop, holding a bouquet. He wanted to know how the photos were coming and requested that Minato finish up quickly since they were opening soon. Minato asked him where he got a bouquet of cherry blossoms from, and Itsuki said that he got them from the proprietress when he dropped by the bar. Itsuki suggested using them as props for the shoot. Shoei swooned at the picturesque figure of Itsuki with cherry blossoms, while Minato was upset at the lovey-dovey atmosphere of the couple. Seeing his brother with the flowers made him want to invite Shizuma to a flower viewing event. Minato was cutting out some branches of the cherry blossoms as props for the rabbits when Itsuki came over and asked about Shizuma working at a clinic. Minato curtly affirmed it, and Itsuki then thought of them having dinner together. Minato noted that Shizuma might not be able to join since he was too busy to even see him. Among the cherry blossoms he was fixing up, Minato saw a seemingly dead branch devoid of leaves and flowers. Itsuki remarked that the branch wasn't dead, but it would take a lot of effort for it to bloom properly. Shoei rejoined them with a big vase in hand, and Itsuki asked him to find another vase. Shoei was confused as to why Itsuki needed a second vase. Itsuki explained that he wanted to put some cherry blossoms in the bedroom so that they could enjoy the view while in bed. Shoei swooned at the thought, while Minato was getting sick of the romantic vibes of his brother and his lover's brother. Minato stayed away from the couple, who were already planning to spend the night together. He picked up the dried branch and stared at it for quite some time before deciding to bring it home. He really saw a comrade in a dying cherry blossom branch and took it home. At home, Minato talked to the branch, saying that staying around the shop with such a bright and lovey-dovey atmosphere would only make it wilt and that they should instead stay together as lonely souls. Crestfallen, Minato peeked at his phone, half expecting a call from Shizuma. However, he was only met with silence, so he consoled himself by saying that he would get used to this, at least over time. A few days later, the dried branch managed to bloom a single bud, and Minato felt betrayed by the vitality of his supposed comrade in loneliness. After staring at the branch for a while, he picked up his phone and thought of something. At the hospital, the 5 vet techs were surprised that Tatsumi and Shizuma finished all the tasks on the list that Dr. Nakajo gave them, despite taking 2 weeks to tick them all off. Tatsumi asked what else they could help with, but the vet techs were too flustered to reply properly since they didn't expect the 2 men to finish the entire list. Dr. Nakajo replied that those were the only things the director left them for training. Shizuma then asked if they could review some patient records, and Dr. Nakajo happily let them. As both men went ahead to get the records, Dr. Nakajo remarked that Tatsumi and Shizuma were so dedicated that they stayed late and even came in during their days off to quickly finish off that list of tasks. She finished off by saying that they lasted more than 2 weeks, the 5 vets' initial bet of how long they would last. They looked glum as they felt guilty about the 2 newbies. Meanwhile, as he was snacking, Shizuma saw the branch with its new bud from Minato's text. As Shizuma asked about the branch, he noticed that the season for cherry blossoms was almost finished. He felt bad for not being able to spend it with Minato. Minato was in a bath when he was surprised to know that Shizuma wanted to see the branch in person on his day off. He got giddy at the chance of Shizuma having time, although his hopes were crushed when Shizuma said he was only free in the evening of his day off. Dejected, he instead told Shizuma to rest and sleep early. He could see cherry blossoms anywhere anyway. Shizuma pressed on, saying that he wanted to see the one that Minato grew. Minato felt that it was unfair for Shizuma to say things like that, as if it wasn't going to make Minato feel touched. Shizuma then texted to ask if he was the only one feeling lonely, which upset Minato because he was also definitely feeling lonely. Minato reasoned out that he had already tried to help Shizuma out. If he was going to be tired after meeting him, it wasn't going to be his fault. Minato planned to pick Shizuma up for dinner, and Shizuma agreed. Minato finished his bath and came over to his branch. Cheering up from their plans, Minato told the branch that Shizuma wanted to see it and thanked it for being the catalyst for their long-overdue meeting. At last, the long-awaited day came. Minato parked in front of the hospital, thinking of it as the place where Tatsumi and Shizuma would come to serve women. From a distance, loud barking noises were growing louder, and they got nearer as Minato saw Tatsumi taking care of a few dogs. As soon as Minato greeted Tatsumi, Tatsumi put his glasses guard up against Minato as he remembered the events from the Japanese restaurant. Minato told him to be at ease since he had no plans of doing the same thing again. Tatsumi asked why Minato came over, thinking that he was finally going to fight the female employees in the clinic. Minato clarified that he only wanted to pick Shizuma up. As he petted a few of the dogs that Tatsumi had, Tatsumi offered to call Shizuma. Minato agreed, but Shizuma came out anyway, surprised that Minato had come early. Minato was surprised to see his lover after a long time. Although he noted that Shizuma didn't have to hurry, Shizuma told Tatsumi that he was going to leave and ask him to finish up. Meanwhile, Minato was gawking at his boyfriend. He finally saw his smile after a long time. It was also his first time seeing Shizuma don an attractive doctor's outfit. As Minato swooned at the sight of Shizuma, he noticed Shizuma having a more defined muscle tone from all the menial tasks he had been doing. Oh, and I definitely swooned at the sight, too. Minato was trying to hold back, and Shizuma noticed him looking away. Shizuma wondered why Minato wasn't looking at him, and then Minato blurted that Shizuma should hurry since he was holding himself back from clinging to him. Seeing his boyfriend blush, Shizuma exclaimed that they should go home now. With Minato swearing that he wasn't going to let Shizuma sleep, Tatsumi was left thinking about going home until a car pulled over in front of the hospital. 3 of the vet techs came out of the car and greeted the 2 men. Minato wondered who the women were, and Shizuma told him that they were the clinic vet techs, who were supposed to have the day off and thus shouldn't be at the clinic that day. Hayami, one of the vet techs, asked them if they were done for the day and invited Tatsumi and Shizuma to go somewhere. Night came, and Minato came home alone. As he put away his stuff, he noticed that the flower on the branch had wilted. Downcast and forlorn, he remarked that it was a good thing Shizuma didn't come at all, as he sat and laid his head down on the table. Meanwhile, Shizuma's female coworkers put their drinks together for a cheer as they huddled around a barbecue. They called Shizuma and asked him to bring a few more skewers to cook. While getting the skewers, Shizuma was upset about not being able to go to Minato's place. Beside him, Tatsumi was sniffling and with tears in his eyes while chopping some onions. He told Shizuma that it was his choice to come, so he should focus. Shizuma sighed in resignation. A while back, the vet techs invited Tatsumi and Shizuma to join them for a cherry blossom viewing party. Hayami said that they could also treat it as their welcome party so that they could get that done and over with. Minato, in the background, didn't particularly like Hayami's tone as she said that about their welcome party. They did consider that it was their day off, so they could freely reject the invitation. Atago, one of the vet techs, noted that they felt bad that they hadn't talked to the 2 newbies, so they wished to throw a welcome party to make up for it, or at least that was what Hayami had been saying. Dr. Nakajo came out of the hospital, asking the vet techs if the cherry blossom viewing party was ready. She also invited Tatsumi and Shizuma, to which Tatsumi agreed. On the other hand, Shizuma declined, saying that he already had plans to get dinner with Minato, who was unnoticed by the vet techs until then. Sayama took a good look at Minato and extended the invite to him as well, saying that having someone as good-looking as Minato would be welcome. Dr. Nakacho, although unsure about the true nature of Shizuma and Minato's relationship, asked if Shizuma's friend would join them. Noticing her hesitation, Shizuma and Minato looked at each other. Shizuma was about to reveal their actual relationship before Minato cut him off and confirmed that he was indeed Shizuma's friend. He thanked them for the invite, although he politely rejected them. However, he pointed out that Shizuma would be joining them. Minato noted that they could just get together at another time. Shizuma insisted that he didn't need to join them since they had plans first. However, Minato remarked that this was a good opportunity for Shizuma to improve his relations with his coworkers. As Minato prepared to leave on his motorcycle, he warned Shizuma not to be too open about their relationship before it hurt him. Shizuma yelled that he promised to come over to Minato's place as soon as the party was over. Not over Minato's introduction of himself to everyone as his friend. Shizuma was pulled out of his daydream as the vet techs were talking about the previous newbie vets that they had over at the hospital. Ataga noted that the reason the list of chores grew was that all the other vets who came before Tatsumi and Shizuma immediately left after seeing the list, so the chores piled up. One of the vet techs remarked that both men might be able to handle it, and Dr. Nakacho hoped so. When Shizuma asked what it was, she mentioned that there was a reason why vets didn't last long in the hospital. There were far crazier things to be done compared to the list. Feeling uneasy, Shizuma further asked what they meant by it. An ominous silence enveloped the female workers until one of the vet techs changed the topic by inviting them to another place. Meanwhile, Tatsumi and Shizuma were left uneasy, with everyone dodging the topic. The vet techs extended the invitation to go to another place to both newbies, saying they wouldn't have to serve them food anymore at the next place. Everyone was excited to drink and hang out with the new doctors, although Tatsumi and Shizuma predicted that they would still serve drinks and take care of the vet techs once they got drunk. Shizuma was thankful that the vet tech's opinions of them were improving to the point that they could join them for informal gatherings, but he still felt bad for the unfortunate timing. Suddenly, a vet tech reached out to Shizuma and asked about Shizuma's hot friend. Shizuma realized she was talking about Minato, and she asked Shizuma to invite Minato to their next place. Shizuma wondered why she also wanted to invite Minato, and then she went ahead to say that vet techs don't see a lot of good men around. So she wanted Shizuma to introduce her to Minato. This woman really thought she had a chance with Minato. Well, I'm here to tell you, sister, you already lost before you even competed. Time to join me over here. Meanwhile, everyone at the bar was surprised that Minato lied about being only friends with Shizuma to his coworkers. The bald drag queen beside Minato pointed out that it was the perfect time for him to reveal that he was Shizuma's lover and then take him away. Minato reasoned that he would feel bad if Shizuma were treated differently because of his outing himself. The drag ladies were frustrated because they could see how Minato made sense, wondering when Minato started being kind and considerate, which is so unlike him. The madam simply sighed at the situation. The proprietress wondered why Minato wasn't staying put at home, to which Minato retorted that he didn't want to drink alone. He told them that he could just hang out with Shizuma any other time, but the drag ladies pointed out that he was waiting for him either way as he glanced at his phone. Someone suddenly hit Minato from behind and apologized for making him wait. Minato immediately looked back and was disappointed to see a random person instead. The man overheard their conversation and invited Minato to sit with him. Frustrated, Minato sharply declined the man's invitation. The man remarked that although Minato was the sassy type, he was better than everyone else in the bar. It was his first time in a mixed bar, and everyone he had met so far was monsters. The raw audacity of this man to insult people right to their faces. I'm beginning to see a partner about the red flags in this series. Minato grabbed the man by the hem of his shirt and postured to throw a punch to his face before the proprietress stopped him. One of the ladies ran her extremely long nails across the man's face as they leered from behind him with an insidious grin. It suggested showing the rude man a good time before he was pulled away by the rest of the ladies, with the proprietress telling him what would happen if anyone insulted the ladies. The proprietress wanted to thank Minato for getting upset on their behalf, but Minato was crestfallen for expecting that person to be Shizuma, despite their voices and touch not even remotely similar. Minato didn't like that it only took him 2 weeks of not being with Shizuma for him to become so upset and disheartened. He was supposed to be fine, but watching other couples be happy made him feel down, which made him resentful of himself. This was a far cry from what he was before he dated Shizuma. Now he had regressed into a petty mess that often threw tantrums and depressive fits at the like Shizuma. I would also go crazy after sheer lack of contact. I knew a piece of that man's, but at least he hadn't been ruining people's love lives if they were nothing. She even reminded him that this was only the start of the fun. She then pulled the alcohol away from Minato and offered him milk instead. Minato recalled his promise to Shizuma, saying that he'd be better, but he couldn't seem to grow beyond what he was right then. This love stuff simply wasn't Minato's style, and he was amazed at the fact that everyone in love felt the same way as him. As Minato was complaining about how high maintenance he was becoming, the proprietress noticed a certain person entering the bar and kept on calling out the distracted Minato. Shizuma suddenly bent over to meet Minato's eyes, asking him what he was mumbling about. While Minato was stunned at the surprise appearance of his lover, Shizuma was glad to have found him in the bar. He wouldn't have any idea where else he'd find Minato if he wasn't at home or the bar. The proprietress welcomed Shizuma and asked him if he wanted anything. Shizuma simply asked to have the same as what Minato was having. Minato fixed himself, not expecting Shizuma to come. Shizuma did promise that he'd come, so he did. As the proprietress gave him milk, Minato was perplexed and unsure of how to feel about seeing Shizuma right then. Shizuma asked what he and the proprietress were talking about, but Minato told her not to say anything about it. Before Shizuma left the party, he declined the vet tech's favor of asking Minato to come with them. The vet tech pleaded and wondered why he couldn't do that favor for her. He then revealed that Minato was his boyfriend, so he couldn't introduce her to him with the intention of dating. The vet techs were completely surprised at Shizuma suddenly outing himself, and Shizuma apologized for saying it out of nowhere. In his mind, Shizuma also apologized to Minato, who warned him about this exact scenario just hours ago. Dr. Nakajo remarked that he had nothing to apologize about. She instead apologized on behalf of everyone for not being considerate. She then noted that Minato must be mad at him now for ditching their date. Hayami then agreed to let Shizuma leave so that he could beg for forgiveness. She confirmed it with the rest of the vet techs, and Dr. Nakajo eventually let him go too while he could. Shizuma felt sorry about leaving Tatsumi behind, but Tatsumi simply told him that he was too distracted to do anything helpful, so he could just leave without feeling guilty. In the taxi, Minato felt sorry for Tatsumi being left as the perfect toy with the vet techs, and Shizuma owed him a lot for this favor. Minato then reprimanded Shizuma for outing himself, concerned about it affecting his work. Shizuma insisted that he had no reason to hide their relationship. After all, they were taking their relationship seriously. Blushing from that statement, Minato stuttered as he was telling him off about it, while the taxi driver was pleasantly listening to the playful banter of the couple behind him. Shizuma missed being at Minato's place since it had been a while since he was there. He was also excited to see the cherry blossom that Minato grew, although Shizuma would realize later on that he was too late. Both men solemnly looked at the branch once they reached Minato's place, with Minato noting that he probably kept the room temperature too high. Shizuma was sad that he couldn't come sooner to see it bloom. Minato saw Shizuma getting dejected over the branch, so he decided to trim the branch so that the other buds could also bloom. He was determined to let Shizuma see at least one bud bloom on the branch. Shizuma was happy to see Minato being dedicated to his branch, and he grabbed Minato from behind to pull him into an embrace. He breathed in Minato's scent, saying that he missed how Minato smelled and how he felt in his arms, which made him feel better. Minato retorted that he missed Shizuma way more than he did, and he felt lonelier without him. As Minato washed his hands after fixing up the branch, Shizuma noted that this wasn't a contest, and that despite Minato being so understanding and rational about their arrangement, Minato did those simply to hide how much he truly missed Shizuma. Upset at having his insecurities exposed, Minato confirmed that he was being childish as he peeled himself from Shizuma and left the bathroom. Shizuma then pulled him into another embrace and tightened his hug around him. Realizing that Minato was upset, Shizuma apologized for making Minato wait for so long. Minato basked in the embrace before telling Shizuma that he smelled. Shizuma told him it was because he stayed close to the barbecue, and as Minato put the branch down, Shizuma wanted to jump into the shower to remove the smell. Minato gently pushed Shizuma to the wall, obviously longing for the touch of his lover. He leaned in to kiss Shizuma and slowly undressed him as he thought of the scent that came from somewhere he wasn't. As he lifted Shizuma's shirt, he invited himself to shower with Shizuma. With the shower wetting both men, Minato leaned toward a wall as Shizuma held him from behind. Preparing to thoroughly love Minato, Shizuma asked if Minato was okay. Weak from the pleasure, Minato exclaimed that he missed the feel of Shizuma's body against his. Encouraged by Minato's expressions, Shizuma held Minato tighter and continued making love to him, making up for all that time they spent apart from each other. Their lips. Shizuma again apologized for the lack of contact and promised to call him every night, but Minato noted that he shouldn't bother anymore, joking that Shizuma should leave his lower body behind if he was going to be away for long. Shizuma thought that he had a long way to go to ask for Minato's forgiveness after losing his trust these past 2 weeks. He asked how he could make up for it, and Minato listed out a few crazy options that scared Shizuma. However, Minato finally asked that Shizuma should at least become an awesome vet so that his waiting wouldn't be in vain. Minato wanted to show that he fully supported Shizuma in his journey to becoming a good veterinarian, and he planted a kiss on Shizuma's lips as he left the tub ahead. Shizuma was swooning at the fact that Minato was an incredible lover who always supported him, but he also felt bad that Minato had to sacrifice his desires so that Shizuma could reach his dreams. He was left pondering how he could fix this unfortunate circumstance. I might have been dismissing Minato as a boyfriend, but he deserves some points for being such a supportive boyfriend. Shizuma is just as lucky as Minato. Outside the bathroom, Minato was checking out the time, which was about to be midnight, on his phone while still in his boxers. Shizuma came out of the bathroom and wondered why Minato hadn't changed yet. Minato said that there was a place he wanted to take Shizuma. Minato brought Shizuma to a ramen place. Shizuma had seen this place before, and Minato had the idea to bring him here since he had only eaten nuts that day. Minato was satisfied with having a hot meal in the middle of the night after passionate lovemaking. While Shizuma recognized that his partner was indeed a man, Shizuma was concerned about Minato eating a lot before sleeping. But Minato said that today was special and they hadn't had the date that they planned yet. The store owner came over to their table and gave them some side dishes on the house. Minato was chatting away with the old store owner, and Shizuma noticed that they were friendly to each other. When the store owner noticed Shizuma, she exclaimed that their ramen tasted better with garlic, and she went ahead and poured a copious amount in Shizuma's bowl. Minato asked for a second plate of the side dishes, while Shizuma was left with his bowl full of garlic. After eating, the couple left the store, and Shizuma left with a good impression of the place. He remarked that he was going to smell like garlic tomorrow. Minato made a bad impression of one of the vet techs dissing him for his smell, and noted that he would be happy if Shizuma were hated because of it. Shizuma told him all for his impression and checked the time. He was surprised to see that it was already 1 a.m. Minato stopped walking and leaned on a rail, forlorn about the night about to end. Minato sulked, saying that he didn't want to go home if it meant that they would sleep and eventually send Shizuma off to work and be unable to see him for days again. Just as Shizuma was about to reach out to Minato, Minato went and said that he was just joking and that it made him cold instead. Shizuma leaned forward and kissed Minato, scared that Minato was crying. Angry at the assumption, Minato proceeded to go home. Shizuma held Minato's hand, wanting to take their time together before going home. Flushed, Minato wanted to clarify that he still supported Shizuma and that he didn't want Shizuma to do anything for him just because he missed him. Shizuma patiently acknowledged all of Minato's explanations. Minato remarked that his overreacting was temporary and he would get used to not meeting him for weeks on end eventually, saying that he lived like that before anyway. However, Shizuma took Minato by the hand and proclaimed that he didn't want Minato to get used to not being with him. Shizuma wanted to encourage Minato to talk about putting up with stuff like this. Minato didn't like what he was becoming, a jerk who was getting more clingy and needy by the day and couldn't get used to being alone. Shizuma instead said that he didn't find him to be needy or a jerk, and he instead looked cuter to him. Shizuma proceeded to list out the many things that Minato did when he missed Shizuma, and Shizuma found them to be incredibly adorable. Minato was annoyed that every time he talked with Shizuma, everything that bothered him so much seemed so insignificant. Meanwhile, Shizuma promised to call them more often and make sure to make time to see him. Although he wanted to have settled into his job before talking about it, Shizuma brought up the idea of him finding his own place. Before he could say anything, however, Shizuma got a call from the hospital. Back at the hospital, a long-haired woman was greeted by the animals in the clinic. She checked the attendance logs and noticed the 2 newbies in the record. The shrill noise of Shizuma's phone cut through their conversation. Although he wanted to continue talking, his phone simply continued to ring, so he had to check to see who the call was coming from. Minato was feeling a sense of déjà vu, and Shizuma saw that the call came from the clinic. When Minato knew that, he felt resigned as he excused himself and went to the nearby Minimart as Shizuma took the call. The person who called introduced herself to be Onodera, the director of the clinic. Shizuma wasn't expecting her to be back from her business trip. She called because she noticed that he and Tatsumi had a lot of overtime on their attendance logs. Shizuma explained that they wanted to get the menial task list done as soon as possible so that they could start training on their practical tasks. Dr. Onodera told him to not do that again since they didn't have enough funds to cover pointless overtime work, and she would overlook this time since Dr. Nakacho must have allowed it. Shizuma felt bad about having all their tiring weeks be called pointless labor, but Dr. Onodera suddenly asked for a favor from Shizuma. Meanwhile, Minato got out of the Minimart after buying cigarettes. As he lit one, he looked at the figure of his boyfriend taking a call not far from him and overhearing a bit of his conversation. Minato puffed a cloud of smoke as he got frustrated that he couldn't even spend his boyfriend's day off without getting interrupted at work, expecting that the call was about calling him in for work. Minato then thought about what Shizuma was about to say before they got cut off. He remembered Shizuma's wish for them to live together. He thought that living together seemed like something they would do in the far future, not this soon when they were only dating for 6 months. Minato broke out of his reverie when Shizuma suddenly reached out to him. Minato was expecting Shizuma to prepare to go to work, but instead, Shizuma said that he was given another day off. Shizuma had explained that the director was mad at them for working during their off days, so she gave him the next day as compensation. Shizuma was wondering why Minato didn't seem too happy hearing that he would be free for one more day. On the other hand, Minato was flabbergasted at the news. He was upset that he did a lot of things thinking that he couldn't spend more time with Shizuma, making him look like an idiot. As Minato was relieving his frustration at Shizuma, Shizuma asked if Minato also had a day off the next day. Minato had an afternoon shift at the pet shop to be coughing as he was on the call with Itsuki, and he was eventually given the day off so that he could go to the hospital waiting for his shift to end. Minato wasn't going to waste time on that and exclaimed that they wouldn't be stepping out of his room for the entire day. Minato then dragged Shizuma back to his place. Shizuma was touched by the fact that Minato even ditched work to spend more time with him. He then trailed off at the thought of the director, thinking that she might be a bit more normal than what the people at work made her seem, only a bit strict. Before the night ended, Dr. Onodera was impressed that the newbies finished the task list with almost no qualms. She checked their resumes as she thought out loud about having a pair of go-getters that were going to be a pain in the ass. The morning breeze led Apedal to come inside Minato's room right when he was waking up. He woke up in the arms of Shizuma, who was reading a book. They blissfully greeted each other with a kiss, and Shizuma pointed out that the branch had grown another bud. Both Minato and Shizuma were glad to see a small flower bloom from the branch. Minato even exclaimed that he loved the twig and was proud of it. Minato then nuzzled closer to his boyfriend. Shizuma noticed that Minato was in a good mood. Minato then remarked at the nice breeze, the great weather, his blooming branch, and Shizuma being with him made him feel like he was in heaven. He basked in the presence of his boyfriend, satisfied with the way things were. I cannot stress how much I love this scene. The perfect atmosphere and the perfect person to spend it with, Shizuma and Minato are way too perfect for each other. I'm left jealous as I read through this. As Shizuma was looking at how Minato looked so happy, he suddenly got the conviction and proposed to live together with Minato. Minato sat upright, taken aback by Shizuma's invitation. Shizuma explained that they wouldn't be able to find more time together with their current arrangement, so living together would be better. Shizuma noticed Minato's hesitation and asked him if he wanted to live with him. Minato confessed that he hadn't imagined living with someone, and the thought of it scared him. Shizuma remarked that he didn't need to decide right away. He was planning to move out of his parents' house anyway, so Minato could just move in with him once he was ready. Minato teased him, asking what Shizuma would do if he ended up not wanting to move in. Shizuma would do his best to make it a place that Minato would like to live in and would keep on convincing him. Feeling weak against Shizuma's firm conviction, Minato wondered why he was suddenly so adamant about it. Shizuma felt the same way as Minato. When he woke up to the sight of Minato beside him, he was incredibly happy about it. He thought that if he could wake up to this scene every morning, he would become the happiest man in the world. Shizuma held Minato's hand as he asked him to think about it. Resigned, Minato agreed, but clarified that he wasn't promising anything. Ecstatic, Shizuma excitedly pulled him into an embrace and kissed him. Minato tried to calm his boyfriend's excitable demeanor, but he felt weak when he saw Shizuma lovingly looking at him with his gentle and kind eyes. "Oh, Shizuma, 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 you can't look at us like that and expect us to not fall in love with you." Enraptured by that soft gaze, Minato was left wondering why Shizuma was looking at him like that as Shizuma pulled him in for a kiss. Shizuma promised that he'd find a place that Minato would love. Minato couldn't bear to say yes to Shizuma's pleas, especially not when he couldn't keep his emotions in check. He needed to be able to control his need to see him before it overwhelmed him, or else Shizuma would simply keep on spoiling him. Both men were intoxicated with their passionate love for each other as they made love. As Minato was entranced by being in Shizuma's embrace, he thought that waiting for Shizuma was driving him crazy. Having the warm sun, a soft bed, his cherry blossom, and his precious Shizuma right arm's reach made Minato feel completely fulfilled. He continued to dream about having all that every day as Shizuma's lips met his in an impassioned kiss. Minato's reveries of being spoiled by Shizuma every day were cut short as Itsuki noticed his happy mood. Itsuki was glad he was well, especially since he was worried about Minato going to the hospital, which is obviously a lie. Minato was feeling an ominous aura from his brother, as Itsuki reminded him that it was hard to cover for someone if they unexpectedly called in sick. Itsuki warned him not to Shizuma. Thoroughly satisfied, he was about to talk about living together with Shizuma before stopping himself to avoid looking like an overly infatuated idiot. Itsuki then invited Minato and Shizuma to come with him and Shoei, since he had something he wanted to discuss with them. Minato asked what happened for him to invite all of them. Itsuki revealed that he and Shohei had decided to move in together. Minato was taken aback by surprise, and Itsuki revealed that he suggested it first, and Shohei simply agreed. Minato was amazed at the coincidence of them dating brothers and even thinking of the same things at the same time. Itsuki then explained that he and Shohei would be living on the second floor of the shop next month, so Minato wouldn't be able to freely wander there as he pleased anymore. Minato didn't protest since they had already decided on it. However, Minato asked him about them living together is a bit too soon, especially since they had only been dating for a little over 6 months. Itsuki explained that Shohei had a crush on him for a year before they dated, and he himself liked Shohei way back. Although they were uneasy, they were more happy about it. Itsuki didn't think that the length of time they had been together was relevant as long as they worked on things where they get along and on things where they did not meet eye to eye. Itsuki simply wanted to be with Shohei, and he let that inevitably decide how it would go from then on. Minato pondered on his brother's words, as Itsuki also noted that living together would also help him stave off anyone who tried to get Shohei. Minato mindlessly asked if he had the capacity to consider stuff like that. Itsuki confirmed that no matter what, he should take care of the things that he held dear in his heart and keep them close. Minato thought about the advantages of living together in terms of checking for signs of cheating. Itsuki noticed him thinking hard about the topic and asked if he was also thinking of living together with Shizuma. He denied the claim as he took the trash out. Itsuki noted that he was so easy to read, as Minato looked so happy as he went out. Tatsumi was wondering if Shizuma was looking for an apartment since he had been looking at some of those postings for a while. Shizuma was indeed looking for one, but he hadn't found any good places lately. Tatsumi knew that Shizuma was still living with his family, so he questioned why he was looking for a place if he didn't need to. As Tatsumi carried up the dog that he was walking, Shizuma revealed his intentions of living with Minato, surprising his glasses-wearing friend. Shizuma talked about finding a place that was good enough so that Minato would be tempted to move in with him. Tatsumi then cut off his reverie by saying that his bad habits were coming back. Shizuma tended to be resolute on one thing and put others in a position where they could only agree. Shizuma refuted this and claimed that he even consulted with Minato first. Tatsumi asked if Minato had indeed clearly said that he was the type of person who would say no if he wasn't interested a bit. However, Tatsumi sympathized with Shizuma, but he also noted that someone assuming his agreement and getting invested in something as major as a home together would make him feel burdened and smothered. I don't know about you, but anything that Shizuma would do is definitely not going to make me feel smothered. In fact, it might be the other way around, although that might just be me talking about a fictional man. As Tatsumi's advice on getting a clear answer from Minato trailed, Shizuma was left dumbfounded to assist with patient examinations, hoping that they would at least learn how to do standard techs and encourage them to work hard since they had a bet about the two. Meanwhile, the proprietress was busy explaining the special deluxe photo collection that she wanted to prepare for the club's anniversary. As she blabbered her plans, Minato was preoccupied with looking for rental units on his tab. Checked if Minato was indeed listening. Minato was listening, and he said that he wouldn't have enough time to get everything ready before the party. The proprietress and Minato continued to argue with the excuse of his schedule being too full lately. The proprietress finally asked what got Minato so lost in thought, to which Minato absent-mindedly deflected her question and continued to look at the rental units. The proprietress chided Minato so hard for being so unkind and inflexible, unlike before. She even mentioned that she even stood in as Minato's parent at one time, but Minato noted that it did more harm than good to him at that time. Minato remained firm in his stance that they should give up on something, but the proprietress wasn't going to have any of it. Meanwhile, Shizuma slumped down in his car after a long day at work. Dr. Nakacho let them go early after helping out on their first day. As he sat down in his car, he thought about what Minato was doing. Shizuma called Minato and reported that he got out early, which felt weird to him. Minato had just finished taking care of his cherry blossom branch and started to prepare dinner. He had Shizuma on speaker as he talked about the bar's photo collection and how he couldn't refuse the proprietress after being blackmailed about his childhood. Shizuma was about to talk about the pamphlets of apartments he got when he was reminded of Tatsumi's words about being smothering. Shizuma put the pamphlets away as Minato asked him what he should use to season his stir-fry. Minato exclaimed that Shizuma's choice of miso was great, and Shizuma could hear the sizzling of the stir-fry from the call. Shizuma got hungry from hearing about Minato's dinner, but Minato teased him, saying that it was all only for him. Minato grabbed some tofu and beer to complete his dinner, while Shizuma sweetly smiled at the thought. Minato heard Shizuma sigh from the other end of the call and thought that Shizuma seriously wanted dinner. However, Shizuma was simply relaxing and satisfied after talking with him. Shizuma thought out loud about how much better it would feel if he came home to the sight of Minato cooking dinner and chatting in person like they just did. Shizuma then realized that he sounded pushy and annoying, so he tried to save face. Minato said that he didn't exactly like that plan. He also wanted Shizuma out of someday. I am so excited to see the domestic life of Shizuma and Minato once they move in together. Shizuma invited Minato to look for places on his next day off, and that he prepared some materials that they could check out. Minato was surprised at Shizuma's excitable mood about it, but he clarified that he hadn't agreed to live with him yet. Shizuma simply explained that Minato could come to give him advice as someone who had lived on his own for a while, and Minato accepted that excuse. Minato wanted to make one thing clear. He hadn't fully agreed to live with Shizuma yet, and he was only giving advice to Shizuma about finding his place. Shizuma agreed to that, although he thought that it was ironic to hear that from someone who was worried about who was going to cook when. Minato then took a look at the apartments that Shizuma had already researched as they settled down in a cafe. Minato proceeded to reject all the apartments that Shizuma had found so far, nitpicking on each one of them. Minato absent-mindedly commented that there might be no place that ticks all the boxes for him. Shizuma tried to convince him of some of the options, like having the kitchen and living room close would be perfect when Minato would be teaching him how to cook, or the size of the tub would matter more than its age since they could take a bath together. Shizuma really knows how to tweak Minato's buttons. Minato pleasantly saw the charm of those places once he imagined what it would look like if they lived together. Shizuma then prodded about other considerations, like not being close to a station, recently remodeled places, windows in all rooms, and a veranda. Minato noticed that Shizuma was enjoying this way too much, and Shizuma simply remarked that he was having fun looking for a place where both of them would be staying together. Minato asked if Shizuma also had his preferences for a place to live. Shizuma replied that he only wanted it to be within the prefecture and not too pricey. He figured that he could just tell him what he wanted when they were going to actually build something. But Shizuma cut himself off and didn't finish the sentence, remembering Tatsumi's remarks about being smothering. Minato noticed that Shizuma was holding himself back. He was used to Shizuma being overbearing with things like saying that they were going to build their home, so he wondered why he held back. As they talked more about the places, Minato thought that there was no guarantee that they even stay together for long, so it was logical that they wouldn't plan that far ahead. As Minato looked at Shizuma, his sight went past his boyfriend and into the straight couple and family that were walking past the cafe. Shizuma pulled him out of his thoughts by playing around with his hands. Shizuma was worried that Minato might be getting bored, but Minato rebutted that it would have been harder for Shizuma to type with only one hand. Shizuma noted that he worked hard so that he could see him, so he wanted to relish in the moment for longer. Shizuma held Minato's hand the entire time as he showed Minato another place he had found. The couple was walking out of the mall while Minato was taking a call of the client. After the call, Minato was sorry for not being able to spend the entire day with Shizuma. Although Shizuma also felt bad for taking up his morning, Minato was feeling frustrated about having to part with Shizuma after getting just coffee. Shizuma then planned to make viewing arrangements at some of the places they found, hoping that their plans would work out. However, a dispirited Minato thought back to the straight couples he saw back at the cafe and noted that it wouldn't be that simple, especially for them, so Shizuma should keep on finding new places so that they had more options. They passed by an ornament store, and Minato's eyes caught wind of a cute elephant statue. Shizuma was worried about Minato's client, but Minato dismissed him and said that the client was nice, so he could spare a bit more time before meeting them. Minato came across the furniture section of the mall's furniture. Shizuma only planned to bring his bookshelves and other small things, and he would have to buy the rest himself. Shizuma suddenly asked Minato if he wanted a big bed, and Minato was taken aback that Shizuma asked him about it. Shizuma noted that he also needed Minato's opinion about it since they would sleep on it every night. Minato thought out loud about sleeping together every night, while Shizuma caught himself back about being smothering and then suddenly retracted his statement about having a big bed together. As Shizuma opened up the option of having separate beds, Minato was getting annoyed with Shizuma uncharacteristically holding himself back, since he was used to him saying heavy things. Minato finally asked Shizuma why he was acting weird all this time. If Shizuma really meant what he said, Minato would have been fine with it, but he was worried about Shizuma since it seemed that something was up. Shizuma then went ahead and explained everything that Tatsui told him. Minato simply laughed after hearing what Shizuma had to say. Shizuma explained that he didn't want to become a jerk and pressure Minato to agree to everything, so he tried to hold himself back. Minato retorted that, according to a certain someone, he wasn't being a jerk, but instead he was acting cute. Shizuma was slowly regretting calling it like that, and Minato was satisfied as long as Shizuma learned his lesson. Minato then started to recite all instances of Shizuma being too overbearing, such as outing themselves to his coworkers, planning about living together and buying books about LGBT life planning. Looking back, it seemed that Shizuma was the clingy one, not Minato. That attitude would be too much for most people, so Minato smugly remarked that only he could keep up with all of Shizuma's smothering. He emphasized it could only be him as he poked Shizuma with a cute plushie on a stick. Shizuma was about to say his piece, but he held back after seeing Minato thoroughly pleased with himself. Suddenly, Minato suggested going to a hotel since he lost motivation to work after spending some time with Shizuma. Shizuma was worried about Minato's client, but he instead got pulled behind a few accordion room dividers on display as Minato enticed him to kidnap him away. Minato's seductive gaze and hands were all over Shizuma, but before their lips could meet, the PA system suddenly announced that Minato's friend was waiting for him at the customer service area. The proprietress was actually the client that Minato was supposed to meet that day and the one who called him out through the PA system. She admonished Minato for playing hooky with her, and she apologized to Shizuma for cutting their fun short. They were riding the elevator as she explained that they would be location scouting until the next day for their photo collection. As the proprietress asked him to call them at night instead, Shizuma looked at Minato, who was obviously not feeling great about how things were going. The proprietress noticed the elephant statue that Minato bought and recommended adding it as a prop for the photo collection. While the proprietress and Minato were arguing over the details of the photo shoot, the elevator door opened up. The proprietress stepped out as she continued to blabber about the shoot, but Shizuma stayed inside and pulled Minato back. Once the proprietress realized that she was the only one who went out of the elevator, she cussed both men, who enjoyed playing hooky inside the elevator. Inside the elevator, both men shared a passionate kiss, and Minato remarked that Shizuma indeed ended up kidnapping him. Shizuma pulled him into an embrace, saying that he wanted to bring Minato home like they were. He asked when they would be done, to which Minato replied that he expected that they would finish late. Shizuma was frustrated that they couldn't match their days off, making them spend less time with each other. Minato went silent for a while and suddenly suggested that Shizuma should buy a big one. Shizuma asked what he meant by a big one, and Minato clarified that a big bed would be great so that even if their days off did not match, they could still spend time together in bed. Shizuma was speechless. Before he could say something, Minato expressed that he felt excited and looked forward to living with Shizuma more than he thought he would. Minato then excitedly declares that they should find an amazing place while Shizuma looks lovingly at him.